First, after a weekend of turmoil in the US state of Minnesota, today a judge is considering whether to pause the deployment of thousands of ICE agents in the state. The sweeping and aggressive immigration crackdown since the 1st of December last year has led to the fatal killing now of 2 people by government officials. Most recently, Alex Pretti on Saturday, who was shot several times after being forced to the ground. His killing then has only added to those tensions in the city of Minneapolis, with local residents taking to the streets to protest the presence of ICE officers. Let's bring in Philip Turl now, our international affairs editor, to talk a little bit about those scenes in Minnesota and in Minneapolis in particular, Philip. And something that's been striking, Philip, since the killing of Alex Pretti over the weekend is the number of American former presidents who have now begun to speak out, specifically Barack Obama.
Yes, and this is something that is quite unusual in normal times in the United States, outside of the situation we're seeing at the moment, where when you are president, once you leave office, you remain silent, or you have your own life with your own affairs afterwards, but you don't intervene in politics to let your successor do what they have to do. This time around, we have not just one, but 2 former presidents, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, who have spoken out against the events in Minnesota over the past couple of weeks. The 2 killings there, one of Renee Good, and then yesterday this killing of Alex Pretti, the nurse who was age 37. And Barack Obama describing horrible scenes which he said he never thought would take place in the United States. Bill Clinton saying it was all unacceptable and that Americans must stand up for their values and speak out, because if we give freedoms away that have been earned over 250 years, we may never get them back. So stirring cries, I think, because basically Donald Trump, since he first took office a year ago, has consistently talked about Joe Biden and been very rude about Joe Biden, blaming Joe Biden for all the woes in the United States. If it isn't Joe Biden, he was also critical of Barack Obama. He's also been very critical about the Democrats. I think this has irritated these 2 former presidents to such a state that they feel now that they have got nothing more to do but to stand up and to voice their support for the protesters there and for the American people, to say, look, if you don't deal with this now, things could get even worse in the future.
And look, obviously, Clinton and Obama, both Democratic presidents. What, though, about Republicans? Because most Republicans, despite the increasing authoritarianism under this Donald Trump administration, have not spoken out against the US president.
Well, it's beginning, and I think Donald Trump is being pushed into a corner. We've seen Donald Trump himself in an interview with the Wall Street Journal giving way to 2 issues, saying, first of all, that we are reviewing everything, which is something that he wouldn't have said before. He's been giving 100% support to the members of ICE, saying that they were doing a tremendous job when asked about what was going on in Minnesota. That's the first point. And the second point is that there are Republicans who are beginning to show dissatisfaction, and basically they are pretty appalled by what has been going on over the last few weeks with all these interventions by ICE. And they're now calling for a proper investigation into the killing of Alex Pretti. We've seen all these images of this shooting taking place. There are certainly 2 completely conflicting reports of what happened. First of all, from the Trump administration, Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Affairs, saying that this was someone who was opening fire at these officers, who was trying to create trouble and was a menace, and that's why they were protecting themselves. But when you look at the video of what happened, it's pretty obvious he was just holding a mobile phone. He didn't have a gun in his hands, although he did have a gun on him that was taken away by these ICE officers, and that he was shot in cold blood. So what they're calling for, these Republicans, is a proper inquiry into all of this. This has been taken out of the hands of the FBI and given to Homeland Security. And I think many people in the United States will be worried about the way this is going on. And as this is happening, there are 2 federal court hearings taking place today in the US. The first one is a judge who's hearing arguments on whether to temporarily halt the immigration crackdown in Minnesota. And the other one is a separate hearing which will be held after a judge issued a temporary restraining order which blocks federal agents from destroying or altering evidence related to the shooting of Alex Pretti. It's come to such an extent now that people are so worried that the administration will try to cover up, destroy the evidence so that the truth will never be known.
All right, Philip Tell, thank you very much indeed. And let's bring in now Kenny Burgos. He's a Democrat. He used to work for the New York State Assembly. He joins us live now then from New York. Hello to you and thanks for speaking to us on France 24.
Hey. Hi, thanks for having me.
Look, I want to ask you first of all, just tell us, look, what went through your head when you saw that footage of the moments before Alex Pretti was killed on Saturday, and then you heard, really not long afterwards, Donald Trump officials saying that he had threatened to massacre officers. What was going through your head when you heard that?
Yeah, I saw the video pretty early morning on Saturday, and after I saw the video, it was clear to me this was a watershed moment for American politics. It was just clear from even that first video that came out that this was an issue that Donald Trump was going to have on his hands, ICE would have on their hands, and the American people would respond to swiftly. And then to see Donald Trump and Department of Homeland Security react so swiftly with commentary stating this man was trying to massacre ICE agents, using really charged language like assassinate, and then to see more and more footage effectively show that this is an individual who was holding a phone, trying to protect a woman who was being shoved by an ICE agent and who was killed in cold blood. I knew this was a pivotal moment in American politics, and we're seeing it play out right now.
All right, pivotal moment, you say. You talk about a watershed. There are, though, not that many Republicans, as we were hearing, who've spoken out against Donald Trump on this. There are, though, a few who've begun to call for an investigation. Are you surprised that more Republicans have not spoken out yet?
I'm a bit surprised, and only because anecdotally I've had many conversations with individuals both in my immediate circle, friends and family who I consider across the American political spectrum. And we've discussed many past issues before. And this is one of those moments where I've seen a near consensus on what has happened here. And so I think this is a moment where Donald Trump and the Republicans are risking breaking with the American people. And that includes members of their own party. And they have to really analyze what's happening here. The American people are frustrated with this across party lines. I mean, this is very apparent what's happening. We've seen multiple angles in what happened to Alex Pretti, and more footage and more investigations only, I think, going to show that this was a man who was killed in cold blood by an American ICE agent.
What about your own party? What about the Democrats? There have been a number of very vocal figures like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who've been very explicit in calling out the ICE agents here. There are, though, some people, though, on the left of American politics who say actually more, quote unquote, mainstream Democrats have not done a good enough job at criticizing this White House and its growing authoritarianism, particularly as exemplified by these ICE agents in Minnesota. Do you agree with that? Do you think mainstream Democrats aren't pushing the White House hard enough here?
We've seen Democrats, stand up against ICE pretty much since Donald Trump's first term, and I think that chorus has grown increasingly, especially into his second term. I wouldn't say that this has only been sort of the left wing of Democratic Party. We've seen mainstream Democrats, especially here in New York, across the board. We've seen many Democrats, from state lawmakers up to congressional lawmakers, really push back on the tactics that ICE is using throughout the nation. We're seeing now threats to ICE funding. I mean, people have called for the disbandment of ICE pretty much, again, since Trump's first term. I think there's always be critics and folks who can say Democrats can and should do more, and it's proving very difficult, right? When Democrats are not in power in all houses of the federal government, and we're now testing what ability state lawmakers, state governors, and really just the state law has against federal immigration tactics. We're really in uncharted territory right now. So I think it's imperative that, Democratic lawmakers do more at all levels of government. But the reality is that there's no playbook for this. We have to, continue to mount the pressure from both a citizen standpoint and certainly from a lawmaker standpoint. But right now, we are all just trying to figure this out in real time and how we can push back against these tactics that, in my eyes, are just completely un-American.
And look, let's talk about New York, the city that you used to work as an assembly person for, because of course all the focus has been on Minnesota, but we have seen ICE raids in other parts of the country. I mean, there is obviously a significant immigrant community in New York. Give us a sense of what the atmosphere is like in your city.
There's fear. I mean, I used to represent the Southeast Bronx, which is really populated with a large amount of undocumented immigrants that come from Ecuador, that come from El Salvador, Mexico, you name it. And you saw a noticeable shift when the ICE immigration raids were really heating up. I mean, streets are becoming desolate. Main thoroughfares that used to have, tons of street vendors, people walking around at shops, restaurant, coffee shops. You're seeing people stay home. You're seeing reporting right now from families in Minnesota that are putting up sheets on their windows for fear of drones looking into their apartments. I mean, these are scenes, as President Barack Obama said, that we never thought we would see here in America, coming from, again, our own American government on its people. So this is really just a new day for us and how we experience this. But there's a lot of fear, and I think that fear extends beyond undocumented immigrants. Again, when you're seeing 2 American citizens that were killed in an American city by an American government, that puts fear into every single person in this country, whether you are undocumented or not. And this is why you're seeing such I think, sort of swift blowback and protest against what's happening in Minnesota, because Americans are saying this should not happen in Minnesota, and it should not happen in any city throughout America.
Kenny Burgos, really good to get your thoughts on this today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.